Hello, drummer friends. I hope you are doing well for today's big exploration into new content of our drumming world. We're going to get into what for a lot of us might be a new style, and that is the style of jazz and the sort of flow and feeling, and then also some of the theory and the rhythm behind it. So I'm just going to play for a second to give you a sense of what jazz drums might sound like. Your goal in being an active listener here is to see if you can keep track of the 4-beat phrases that I'm playing. And I'm usually going to be breaking that up by having my hi-hat on beat 2 and 4. So you're going to hear like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to try to keep that going as an anchor all the way through. I'm just going to play some different ideas, keeping time and playing some fills within the style. So you can hear some examples of that. All right, try to keep sense of the 4-beat phrases. 1, 2, 3, and. All right, so I laid out a little bit of a pathway, keeping time in this common jazz way where my right hand is on the ride cymbal, mostly playing quarter notes and different embellishments of that big beat. My hi-hat, as I said there, I was trying to keep it just on 2 and 4, and then I was creating a lot of different conversation, interaction between my left hand and my right foot on the bass drum. And I could often move my left hand around to the different toms and just do some ideas that, sort of created a phrase and then continued it. So I kept time in that way for a little while, and then I took my right hand off the ride cymbal and played in a more soloistic fashion. So even though I was improvising throughout, then I got to improvise with both hands together and create some different melodies around the toms and stuff like that. Okay, so how do we get this good sense of jazz style and phrasing? Got to listen to some jazz. Got to go out and find some great examples of jazz recordings, and I'm going to tell you some right now, and then we're going to play some drum parts that might work for these sort of things. Cannot go wrong listening to recordings by trumpeter Miles Davis, especially anything that was made between, I don't know, like the early 1950s and the late 1960s. That's gonna, for the most part, sound like this type of jazz. And he has a big stylistic range. He has a lot of different great players and great drummers who play with him. But for the most part, that's gonna sound like this type of jazz. From 1968, 69 on, Miles Davis and a lot of other musicians were also very influenced by rock and roll. And so the sound of their grooves and the production and things like that turned into what was often called fusion, and that brought in jazz and rock influences all together. And it's not always going to sound like this sort of phrasing. So it's great, but for now, try to focus on some of this what we call more like swing-oriented jazz. So we got Miles Davis. We have the great big bands, like meaning ensembles that often would include 15, 18, or 20 people. And the role of the drummer is slightly different in that group, but you're going to hear a lot of great sense of this swing style. And so I would recommend listening to the Duke Ellington Big Band, Count Basie Orchestra, Duke Ellington Orchestra. They often called these bands by that sort of moniker. Duke Ellington Orchestra, Count Basie Orchestra. Those are two great places to start, I would say. And then also other groups, Louis Armstrong, Benny Goodman. Just pick some recordings by those folks and then follow the thread of who are the musicians who play in the band, and you'll be in good shape. All right. So if we're working on this type of a jazz beat or something that's going to work well within this. Big thing is what I talked about up front, is we got to get our hi-hat on 2 and 4. If you've been playing along with these videos or you've been taking any sort of drum class with me, you're in pretty good shape because we know that that's an integral part of our walking foot pattern. 1, 2, 3, 4. The thing that's going to change a little bit is that the bass drum is not always just playing on beat 1. We want to do something that propels the time a little bit more, which means playing on all 4 beats like this. Do that. I'm playing pretty quietly with my bass drum. This is a technique often called feathering, keeping the beater pretty close to the head, because it's meant to lock in with the upright bass sound. Boom, 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 boom. And they often occupy kind of the same sort of, punchy in the chest sort of frequency. It's a good thing. All right, and that helps people to dance along with it. Let's see if you can just do the feet. So walking 4 on the floor is what we call this, hi-hat on 2 and 4. Let's try that. 1, 2, ready, feet. Great. So a big challenge is going to be controlling that right foot. So it's a good idea to work on that, just your feet, or maybe just the bass drum. Get it so that it's under control. All right. Next thing, we're just going to add to that even, steady quarter notes on our ride cymbal. See if you can do that right off the bat. So 1, 2, ready, try it. Cool. So to get some of this jazz emphasis, we're actually going to create a little bit of a lift on our ride cymbal beat to place a little accent along with where we place our hi-hat. So that's going to be beats 2 and 4. So I just want to see you take those even strokes on your ride cymbal beat, lift a little before in 2 and 4, and it's going to sound like this. So listen and then we'll try it together. 2, 3, listen. See that? One, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3. And so, same way that maybe you've been working on our accents with our warm-ups, you got to get your wrist up to make that stroke a little bit higher. It doesn't have to be really, really loud and forceful, but it should be a difference in stick height to get that flow happening. Let's play that together. Let's try 8 bars. 1, 2, feet and right hand. Okay, all right. Hope that is sounding and feeling pretty good. And if not, it takes a lot of time. And this is where you'd probably just want to go to a great recording. I would recommend pulling up, there's a Miles Davis song from a great album called Kind of Blue, and the song is called Freddie Freeloader. It's a 12-bar blues, which is very common in rock and jazz. And it's about this tempo. 2, 2, 3, 4. 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Listen to what the drummer, his name is Jimmy Cobb, is doing, and most of what he's doing is exactly that. He's playing quarter notes on the ride cymbal with some embellishment that we're going to talk about in the next video. But he's just creating nice and steady time and then adding in some cool chatter and interaction with his left hand and bass drum. But part of your practice, if you're doing this for my class, is going to be to play along with that recording. All right, so let's play some time at that speed, and then you are going to get to look up that song and try to play along with that recording. Here we go. Let's try about the tempo of that. We're not doing anything with our left hand right now. You can just let it rest on the snare drum. You can wave to your friends, but try to keep good posture, good technique, good groove with everything else. Here we go. Freddie Freeloader tempo. 1, 2, 3, and... All right, think coincidentally that was 12 bars. So that's one time through the form. All right, so your homework now is to take those 3 limbs, that groove, and practice it. Freddy Freeloader is about 9 or 10 minutes long, so that's going to give you a good opportunity to listen. Try to really lock in with what the ride cymbal, the hi-hat. You're not going to be able to hear the bass drum very well. Oftentimes he's feathering, but a lot of times he's breaking it up. Try to keep just steady quarter note time. Especially listen to the upright bass that's being played by Paul Chambers. Try to lock everything you're doing with your quarter note feel, boom, 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 right in with that, because that is the roll, that is the simpatico of drums in bass, especially in a jazz setting. All right, go off and practice that, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.